Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. This is Tending to Change, and I'm your host, Jenny Juarez. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, I'd like to start our conversation today with touching in on a metaphor that I used in a recent episode when I said that I'm inviting us to learn how to trust the river of life. And I love this metaphor of seeing life as a river that has a flow and an innately intelligent rhythm and direction. It's something that we can both witness and experience directly as we cultivate a certain measure of curiosity and stillness and sensitivity. Take a moment to consider how this wisdom is reflected in nature. No one tells migratory birds when to fly south in the winter and when to return north in the spring. And when we plant seeds in the spring, they sprout roots without instruction, and then they go on to grow and bloom and decay, and then they release new seeds for next spring. In the trees, they know when to burst forth with flowers and leaves, and they know when to release those leaves and draw in for the cold winter. And monarch butterflies, hatched in late summer, they intuitively migrate by the millions to southwestern Mexico. And amazingly, they fly in masses to the same winter roosts, often to the exact same trees. And you might think that's because they're familiar with the route, but in fact, individuals only make that round trip once. The butterflies returning to Mexico are the great-great-grandchildren of the butterflies that left the previous spring. Even our own bodies develop in predictable ways, barring any diseases or genetic variations. It's really amazing. In all of these examples, there's no thinking, there's no being told what to do, there's no self-consciousness at all. It's just living and moving from this innate wisdom of life. Life flows in an endless cycle like a river. You may call this energetic movement God or creator or the universe or something else. I call it grace. And my definition of grace is the intelligent unfolding of unfathomable love. It's unfathomable because words will always fall short of what we want to express when we talk about God or the divine. But our bodies possess the capacity to intuitively know it because we are a fractal of it. Where our choice comes in is how we choose to experience this flow of life. Do we resist the current by gripping frantically at the roots on the riverside? Meanwhile, we're hitting our heads against stones, getting smacked by branches, and gasping for air as we fight the current? Or do we surrender to it? Do we soften into the water, floating down the middle of the current, allowing it, trusting it to take us where it will? And that is definitely easier said than done. Our American dream culture has led us to believe that if we simply work hard enough, life will work out exactly how we want it to. And if it doesn't, that means that the fault lies squarely with us. And while it's true, we do need to put in work necessary to help our visions come to life, I can say with confidence that nothing is done by us alone. For one thing, we're each the culmination of countless ancestors who survived and thrived against all odds of war, disease, environmental catastrophe, famine, attempted genocides, and a whole lot more. They passed the best and worst of our blood and bone lineage to us through their legacies, faith traditions, and cultural heritage. And then there are the countless experiences and circumstances and teachers and guides and spiritual friends, even our supposed enemies who have guided us forward in our evolution as individuals. But beyond the many influences that I just listed, have you ever sensed that there might be something deeper guiding and influencing your life? Some type of omen or synchronicity that whispers to you that you're on the right path. In my own life, I reflect on how my husband and I came to meet one another. We met when we were 19, and we crossed paths at a party because my best friend started dating his older brother. Later on, he stayed at my friend's and his brother's apartment, so I saw him every time I came to hang out with my friend. Eventually, I started coming to see him more than to see her, and the rest is history. But that's not the end of the story. Over the years that we've been together, we've discovered that we went to some of the same events when we were children. We also both attended the same free lunch summer program at a local elementary school, and that was the same school that he and one of my cousins were classmates in. As a teen, he hung out at a friend's house who happened to live on the same street as I did. But we never met during any of those circumstances. And even though we didn't meet, I can't help but wonder if there was a subtle energy drawing us toward one another all along, waiting for us to take notice of each other at just the right time. Consider your own life for a moment. Have you ever noticed how during challenging times in your life, right when things seem most bleak, a person or a book or a song or a quote or a movie, something appears at just the right time, shifting things and giving you the confidence to move forward? There are intuitive messages coming to each of us all day long. The problem is we're often too distracted to notice them. It requires a certain measure of sensitivity and awareness to register them. But an even larger obstacle for us to work through is releasing victim mentality. Victim mentality is this idea that life is happening to us, that we are just being pushed around, whipped around by life as if we're caught in a churning ocean. In victim mentality, we're isolated, we're powerless, and we're helpless and in need of a savior. We take in the whole experience of our lives as if we're the main character and the world is against us. I'll never forget when my teacher Rick told me to include myself in the story. He said, we're always looking through our eyes out at the world as though we're the main character and everyone else is playing a supporting role in our life. But if you touch your arm and you look down at your arm and your body, you'll realize that you are a character just like everyone else. You're not the main character. We're just a part of all the characters in life. So it's an invitation to expand our perception beyond just our eyeballs to also include a view from slightly above, slightly behind our heads, so that we can include ourselves in the story. And when we can see things from a broader perspective over a longer period of time, we can begin to develop faith. Now, there's a beautiful quote by Kirtanwala and teacher Krishnadas. He says, "Blind faith is useless. It is based on nothing, an emotional state that comes and goes. Real faith comes from your own experience." For me, real faith has emerged as a deep sense of trust or confidence in the unfolding storyline of the universe. Because even the difficult things that I've gone through in life, they have shaped me. They have shaped who I have become and am becoming. And it's as if all my life experiences have informed the next unfolding of my becoming. There's no finish line. And that's tricky because we tend to view time in a very linear way, with birth as the starting line and death as the finish line. And in this linear time model, we're often very productivity and future focused. It's very mental. There's this overemphasis on, if I achieve this thing or I reach this level, then I'll be happy. In Buddhism, they call this if only mind. Like, if only I could make $100,000 a year, then I would be happy. Or if only I could lose 20 pounds, then I would be happy. Or if I only had this partner or this house or this job, then I would be happy. Not appreciating that if we can't learn how to find happiness exactly where and how we are right now, it's not going to exist in some future version of you. Because you may achieve all those goals that you set out for, the income, the weight, the partner, the job, the house, and then what? Then you get a knee injury and you put some of the weight back on. Or there's layoffs in your industry and you find yourself unemployed. Or your beautiful house gets destroyed by a storm and you have to rebuild or move. Or your beloved passes away and you have to find a way to move on by yourself. See, this is the trap of thinking in terms of our future being better than our present moment. But there's another way of looking at time, and that is cyclical time. Cyclical time is more connectivity and now focused. There's a devotional emphasis, and it's very embodied. Cyclical time is what our ancestors were synced up to when they would chart the stars and the movement of the sun so that they could know when to plant and when to harvest, when to move and when to hunker down and prepare for the cold winter. They were more attuned to the life cycles of childhood and puberty, middle age and old age. And there was a greater appreciation for how things are just continually flowing and cycling. You know, nothing in nature can bloom and grow all year long. It needs fallow periods, periods of rest and integration, and times of decay and death. Decay is not a failure. Death is not a failure. It's a part of the cycle. And it seems to me that when we live from this perspective, there's a little bit more space. There's a little bit more breathing room. You know, I talked so much about habits and attention in the first few episodes, and I spoke mostly about biological needs like when we eat, when we sleep, when we wake up. But I really want to drive home the fact that our habits that we learn early on go so much deeper than that. I mean, the things we pick up from our caregivers and other influential adults in our lives extends to whether and how active we are, how we soothe ourselves when we experience difficult emotions or physical pain, how we show up as friends, how we celebrate important events, how we grieve, and even how we perceive and interpret the world and the people all around us. All of these things get shaped through habitual experiences and impressioning done very early on. And one of the more important things that I want to emphasize in this podcast is that even though, yes, it's true, these habits are laid down early in life, and we do add to them as we grow up, they can be changed. We can choose to show up differently. We can choose to perceive our lives and our environment and the world around us differently. We can choose to respond to our life circumstances and experiences differently. However, we are working against such a strong habit energy that it often takes quite a bit of self-awareness, discipline, and deep intention for us to be able to overwrite these early habits. And that seems to be a big part of what people often refer to as the spiritual path or the spiritual journey. As I said last week, so much of the spiritual path is a psychological and emotional maturation process where we allow ourselves to grow up and evolve. And we begin to see ourselves in a more malleable way. We begin to understand that however we've been taught to box ourselves up and categorize ourselves, these labels can be changed. We can redefine who we are. And actually, I would argue that it's not that we're redefining ourselves at all, as much as we're just uncovering who we naturally are, who our soul naturally wants to express itself as. So much of this journey is letting go of what our personality self or our ego self tells us. This is who you are. This is how you're supposed to live. This is what's acceptable. And learning instead to be guided by our intuition, our bodily wisdom, led by our faith, that deep confidence that you are held. But if we've ignored our body's wisdom, whether that's forcing ourselves to stay awake when our body desperately wants sleep, or demanding that it eat more or less when it's communicating a different need, or when we force our body to be in environments or around people who don't make us feel safe and connected, all of these little violations of trust against our body pulls us further away from our intuitive wisdom. So one of the first things we have to do when we desire to reconnect to our intuition is cultivate a trusting and respectful relationship with our bodies. And this includes differentiating between our intuitive wisdom and our inner critic or anxiety. It becomes an experiment of trial and error. But from a higher perspective, there are no errors. It's just more learning. The good news is there are great supports and resources we can use to guide us along our way. Yoga is but one example of many ways to reestablish a loving relationship with your body. Dance could help. Therapy could help. Tai Chi or Qigong could help. Meditation could help. And it astounds and humbles me to consider that if it weren't for the depths of despair and grief that I experienced after the death of my grandma, I might never have taken an interest in yoga or meditation or mindfulness or any stillness practice at all. It's as though these events, painful as they were all currents in the river of life moving me toward what was next. And yes, I have faced many difficult challenges since then. Life has not always been easy and blissful and meditative, but I'm grateful for exactly where I am and for how my life is turning out. And I trust that the lulls and the difficulties in the space contain their own valuable wisdom too. I'm learning more and more every day how to listen to and honor my body's wisdom, trusting my instincts and my gut, even if that means I'm standing alone. So let's finish today's episode with a practice of feeling from within our bodies and outside our bodies. So taking a dignified seat, the spine long, feet on the ground, just these familiar practices of tuning into the breath, breathing in and out the nose, one breath after the other. Bringing your awareness to the now moment, feeling into your body, feeling the weight of your body on the chair or the floor. Now taking a look at your hand, feel it with the opposite hand, and notice the length of your fingers, the softness or the roughness of your skin. Notice the crinkles in your skin where your knuckles are, and your fingernails. Just feeling that you are in a body. Now closing your eyes, hold that same hand out in front of you, no longer touching it, no longer looking at it. Can you feel that you have a hand? How do you know? What are the sensations that you feel? Maybe some pulsing or throbbing, some tingling sensations. Feeling the hand from inside the body, not relying on the sensory input. Now opening the eyes, continue to look at that hand and gently wave it back and forth, turning it to and fro, feeling it from the inside, looking at it from the outside, coordinating the movements of the hands to your breath. We'll finish the practice by resting the hands on the thighs and taking 2 or 3 more deep, soft, long breaths. That practice of waving the hand, I learned it from teacher Joseph Goldstein, one of the initial founders of the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts. He's a wonderful teacher, and it's just so simple and practical to just wave your hand back and forth and observe it and feel it. If you have a busy mind and it's hard to close your eyes and focus on the breath, this is a beautiful practice to do. There's movement involved to help with the concentration, but you're still deeply present and embodied. I'm giving you these different tools, these different practices at the end of each of these episodes so you can experiment and see what you feel drawn to. I encourage you to take just 5 minutes every day and do some kind of practice. Just setting intentional time aside to be present, to slow down, to connect to the body and to the breath. And yes, the mind will be so busy and it will demand your attention to go here and there. And it will tell you there's not 5 free minutes in the day for you to do something so useless and unproductive. But that's a lie. You can find 5 minutes. It's about determining what is important to you right now. So as the thoughts come in your practice, just let them flow through as though you're on that river, that flow of life. And the thoughts are just leaves floating on the top of the river. Just let them flow. Notice them and let them flow. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love taking this time to be with you. I hope that you're finding some usefulness in these episodes. And I would encourage you to take in what is useful and discard anything that feels irrelevant or unhelpful. There's something for everybody here. And at the end of the day, I want you to learn to trust your own intuitive wisdom and to decide what feels right for you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.